Okay.
So hello and welcome everyone to this evening's program, The Fake Adventures of the Cheshire Cat in Wonderland. This program is being recorded and the video will be available on our website in the near future. My name is Paul Lai and I'm a librarian here at Ramsey County Library in Shoreview. I'm delighted to introduce our program today, and I'm going to begin with some acknowledgements and housekeeping details. So this program is funded in part with money from the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund. We hope that you enjoy these offerings made possible by the state of Minnesota. If you do, let your legislators know. Today we're working in the Zoom webinar platform. You should see controls either at the bottom of the screen or at the top, and they may be hidden until you move your cursor or touch the screen. Although your mic is turned off for the webinar, the chat box is available for you if you have need for some technical help. You can also open the chat box by clicking on that icon. It looks like a balloon. If you don't see the chat icon in your control bar, it may be hidden in the ellipses and the more icon. Feel free to use the chat to just chat with each other or chat to the artists tonight. That's also where you can type any questions that you have for the artists for them to answer during this evening's program. At the end of the program, I will invite you to fill out a survey for the Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund grants, and I'll provide that link for you in the chat box at the end of the session. So I do have the great pleasure of kicking us off tonight. So I'm going to begin with a couple of things. First off, here's a list of the artists that we'll be enjoying artwork from today. You'll be hearing from a few of them and they'll talk about the projects that we're getting a chance to experience this evening. I'm also going to start playing a video of the actual gallery exhibition of these artists' artwork that unfortunately the public is unable to view at this time because it is in our community program room in Shoreview Library. And as you may have guessed, if you, or you may know, Shoreview Library, along with all of the Ramsey County libraries, are currently closed to the public due to COVID-19. So let me back up a little bit and tell you a bit about how this whole gallery exhibition came to be. Starting last year, in the fall of 2019, I and some of the other librarians at Ramsey County Library were really thinking about how to use this exhibition wall in our community program room a little bit more extensively. So we had the exhibition sort of materials installed on this wall when the library was built a few years ago. And it's been used by a local art gallery for their 3 times a year exhibitions. During the rest of the year, we've had a fairly blank wall, and we thought this is a good chance to invite some local artists to exhibit their works and to really liven up our space throughout the year. So towards the end of 2019, I began to cobble together some plans for inviting artists to bring their artwork to us. And at the same time, Rita approached us with a proposal with this particular exhibit. The timing was perfect, and she was willing to work with me to figure out some of the logistical details of mounting an exhibit in the library. And so over the next few months, we planned and the artists finished up their projects, got everything framed. Early in March, they installed this exhibit on our wall. And I think it was literally a few days after we closed the doors to the public. So unfortunately, the public did not get much of a chance to visit this exhibit. It's also meant to be a fairly interactive exhibit with the story that you'll hear about tonight in book form, and places for the audience or the patrons in the library to be able to provide their reactions to the art and the story. So we were really feeling like it was an unfortunate kind of thing that we couldn't have this exhibit and the interactive elements. So I talked with the artists about making it into a virtual program. So here we are. This in some ways also takes the place of the artist talk that we had planned earlier, where people would have had a chance to view the exhibit in the actual space and meet the artists and hear from them about their actual project. So without further ado, let me go ahead and turn it over to our artists to talk a bit about this project. Rita.
Well, thank you, Paul. We're really grateful to you for all you did to help us in this endeavor. We had no idea it would end up to be a virtual experience, but it's really been quite an adventure getting us all together to produce this for the public. And we really hope to instill a lot of inspiration for people who might actually hear the story and see our art. I am joined, as Paul had mentioned, tonight by Laurice Wade and Linda Hildebrant, and our fourth friend and artist, Jane Rosine, is here in spirit with us tonight. We had quite a long journey in collaboration, not only among ourselves, but then with the library, because as you know, so many things changed during these days of COVID, these strange times. Anyway, a lot of our art came really from the actual story that I had written quite a while ago. Cece was actually born, the Cheshire Cat was, in my view, born in February of 2016. Anyway, we were excited to share our exhibit at Ramsey and County Library there in Shoreview. And then when we realized we had to go virtual, that kind of changed everything. And as Paul shared with you, the actual video of the art on the wall, you would have been more able to kind of go through the art yourself and look at the art and possibly read the book. But because it became virtual, we had to more or less provide you the journey of through this exhibit and listening to the audio, which will be coming to you later. Paul's going to set up something so that you can actually see and hear the audio book. Anyway, I guess the big thing I'd like to share is we really had to adapt. We many times thought that this was it, we weren't going to go forward, but the library was very encouraging. So we did adapt, and there are 9 chapters to the book. And we set it up so that you actually would have an audio presentation with a visual. And so we did a lot of work together, and I think worked pretty well together. And what was amazing is each one of us had kind of special talents that we brought to it. And I know we'll be talking about this a little bit more, but I had to actually read my story. I had written it, I had read it to myself, but to read it out loud was a different kind of challenge. But I'll get into that a little bit more later. But I mean, I had to have a quiet house. I had to download a voice recorder, and I had to remember to put my phone on airplane mode. And those are just, you know, issues that came up with my actual audio reading, or the reading of the book for you. Then Laurice, what she brought in with this, the virtual experience, is all of her background in photography and framing, organizing, in order to develop the photo files for the virtual experience. And then to be converted into video files that Paul would use. And then Linda had background in communications, writing, editing, graphic design, and that came in real handy when she had to develop a storyboard for all the artwork for the exhibit to match the narration. I had never heard of a storyboard before, but I learned that from Linda. Anyway, I'm going to open it up to Linda and Laurice, if you'd like to share a little bit more about the collaborative efforts that you put into this when we developed the virtual show. Linda?
Oh, hi. Thank you all for being here. I'd like to say that as well. And yeah, I think we spent a good amount of time over a 2-year period. At first, when we started working together, we were all inspired by the story. We were creating artwork. We were meeting together. We were sharing what we were working on. And we didn't really exactly have an exhibit in mind. When we got this incredible opportunity from the library to exhibit, we were all very excited. We put all our time and effort into finishing up our work, putting it all together, deciding exactly how it was going to be hung on the wall. Again, Laurice spent a lot of time with, scale wall projects with little 2 size, pieces of paper that imitated the size of each piece of artwork, so we could put it all out on paper. And then we finally hung it, and we loved the way it looked. And then it was, kind of over in a few days. So adapting to this video opportunity and this virtual experience has been a challenge. I'm feeling nervous now because I feel like I'm just talking into air, and I don't know if people can hear me. But anyway, thank you for listening.
Laurice?
Yes. Yeah, this is Laurice. Hi. The collaboration actually was, as Linda said, it was very, very open in the beginning, and I don't even know if you'd call it a collaboration, but we had Rita's story as a starting point, and got together and showed each other our artwork and talked about it and talked about the story. Rita's story is very unique, and we will talk about that maybe in a little later, but it provided us with lots of room to play and lots of ways to be inspired. So it's an exciting starting point, and we spent time, gave ourselves lots of time because we intertwined this with our daily lives, and we supported each other along the way and just exploring and discovering, and we really enjoyed the advancement of how things were going. When it came to the show and the video and so forth, we just had no idea that was going to happen, but it really is made it in the end something that we're excited to be able to share with everyone.
For sure.
Another thing that we had in common was that we had met through the White Bear Center for the Arts. And that was a great place to meet other artists and to meet other people who were doing the kind of work we were doing. And suddenly you had this opportunity to talk with people who were kind of facing the same kind of challenges that the rest of us were. Like, how do you motivate yourself? How do you keep working? How do you keep yourself from tearing up all the work that looks horrible right today? Do you relax? Do you put it away? So people would give you advice. No, put it away somewhere and look at it a month later and just kind of see where things are. So that was a good opportunity. And then we all kind of helped each other with that too. And the friend that's here with us in spirit, Janie, was just a very fun and exuberant person. She always had a funny story to tell. She kept things really moving, and we just miss her, and so happy that she was able to contribute a piece. Her failing health, she died in January of this year, so that was really sad and hard for us.
Yeah, it was really sad. And what I enjoyed about Janie, and still do, is she'd always talk about woo-woos. And to me, that was synchronicity, which I really believe in synchronicity big time. So I just loved Janie always would come and meet with us and talk about all these kind of magical moments. And we were sharing a lot of magical moments too as we were getting together and this process occurred. I had just, initially just wrote a short story. I'd never written a short story before. And Laurice encouraged me to copyright it, and then I handed it out to the art group. And before I knew it, Linda said, let's take this further, and because this is what artists do. She said that quite a bit. And Laurice just really supported the story. So our art just kept coming from the story and then beyond, because we influenced each other, and I found it was finally a place where I could share my art without too much embarrassment. And I got a lot of support from these ladies. It really was great.
Right. That was a positive experience for me too, because sometimes it get in with art becomes very competitive, and then you're comparing yourself constantly. So that kind of fell away after a short amount of time working together with Laurice and Janie and you. So that was a very positive experience for me.
That's true. And sometimes we just get together and we didn't have any art. We just hang out and talk and kind of, get our ideas together. But the other kind of magical thing is we'd have so many different opinions on things, so many different backgrounds, very diverse group, very different talents, but we all drew or dabbled in art, as I have. And it was amazing how when we would go forward, we were able to come to a pretty good conclusion together. And I always admired that about us as a group.
The sharing was key. I mean, we'd share something with, like maybe a technique or something with each other, and then we'd go try it out. We'd say, well, what could that do, and how would that look? And I remember there was a moment when Linda came forward with some of the abstracts that she actually showed in the work, and I hadn't done abstracts in quite a while, and I thought, there's something about that, and it really inspired me to continue doing abstracts. So that was key for me, and things like that were just felt magical was really wonderful.
Right, and it's kind of beyond illustration, really, though some of the pictures are directly in response to certain parts of the book, but there wasn't a regimentation to it. It was pretty much what each of us wanted to grab from it and make art about. So it was nice to have that kind of lack of structure, which I think artists like. I'm not sure, but I think we do. So that was also kind of made it special. But I think I'd maybe mentioned it before with this virtual thing is we are actually spoon feeding you, the audience, when you actually do go to the virtual experience for all 9 chapters. We're actually sharing certain art with you while I'm more or less reading to you the story. So it's a little more focused that way and developed. So in a way, you kind of lost some control there, but then you get much more of the experience. And we're hoping it does, like we say, motivate you and inspire whatever your passion is. So anyway, do you think of any other things, gals, about this collaboration? I know we have more stories after we show them a clip. We're going to show you a little preview, I think, chapter 1. So you can get an idea of what all this is about. But you think of anything else?
No, I think we've covered a lot. I think it's, it would be good to let people see chapter 1 and see how the narration kind of messes with the images.
Okay, let's do that. And Laurice, did you have anything you wanted to add before we do that?
Everything's fine. Everything's
good? All right, Paul, if you're able to upload chapter 1 and share it with our audience, the video experience.
Yes. And let me know how the volume is for this. So we'll go ahead and play chapter 1 for you. It runs about 4 minutes.
The Fake Adventures of the Cheshire Cat in Wonderland. Chapter 1, Negative Space. Cece was tired, very tired of waking up in the middle of the night, painting white walls white. To become more creative, one of her life's many goals, Cece began to copied others' artistic works and magazines by outlining the shapes with a black Sharpie, used tracing paper to draw someone else's photo in the newspaper, tested the limits of thin pieces of transparent paper. She delved into her copycat tendency also by engaging in tree pose and mountain pose to imitate nature in her yoga classes. She started to draw lines in her landscape paintings that weren't there. She had read somewhere there are no lines in nature. This was all very troublesome. She wanted to be a well-known artist, but from casual observation, a successful artist needed to be dead. She took long, well-earned breaks in negative space. Once refreshed, drawings were again submitted to calls for artists. Every entry cost was $35 to $70, paperwork to be filled out, framing expense of $50 to $70 more, going to the open house to engage in 4 hours of smiling plus mileage. These are details that drove Cece up the pole of anxiety and dread. She agreed with others it was lonely at the top. Yes, the polecat was getting very desperate as no paintings were being purchased. The only purchaser of her paintings was, in a sense, Cece. She began to philosophize and initiated a quest for research. She needed new ideas for her drawings. She researched lines in the universe, but due to auto-editing, Google referred her to laws of the universe and its mysteries. The net was catching her. Reference were made to Hermes Trismegistus, an ancient founder of alchemy, occult wisdom, and astrology. She began to connect the dots. Google also listed The Kabbalion, a book published in 2012 by 3 authors who wrote of the teachings of this Hermes guy. This was getting exciting. The hair on the back of her neck was beginning to stand up, and she felt a static electricity about her finds. After downloading her researched laws of the universe, she was most attracted to ideas of travel between energy, mind, matter, and spirit. The fakers of old, interesting name, she thought, were able to move between different planes of substance and appearance. Through self-hypnosis, meditation, and the art of swallowing one's tongue, a faker could appear dead for up to 2 to 3 days. In a book called A Search in Secret Egypt, a faker named Tara Bay was able to enter a cataleptic coma, some kind of cosmic cat unconsciousness, a temporary death. Bingo. Lifelines to death dodge. The Cheshire had heard of the expression, cat got your tongue, and thought there could be some kind of connection here. She had experience with static and non-static electricity, pole conductivity, which all will be proven to the reader, stripe development, learned at a local tanning booth, and she certainly was scaredy. So going back and forth between planes of existence didn't seem too far-fetched. She knew once declared dead, her drawings might become more valuable. She could possibly become rich and famous, full of high status, untouchable, so to speak. The galleries would be clamoring for her work. No more forms, entry fees, etc. She could finally get her paws on that fame and fortune. There was more than one way to skin this cat. Well, we got through it.
Yeah. Great
That's
again.
chapter 1. Oh dear. Anyway, this next piece or part of our presentation, now that you've gotten a little bit of a sample of what the full experience will be, as that's 1 chapter out of the 9. But we want to talk a little bit about the art that we actually did and some of our experiences during this process, and what drew us to feel inspired by the story and just the journey. So I'm going to start with Laurice and ask you, Laurice, what was your favorite part about our collaboration?
Well, there's so many favorite parts. However, I did want to, the discovery that was in your story, there were so many interesting phrases and puns and just lots of places to get imagery. So as everyone heard this story, I really felt like it's a kind of a cross between a short story and poetry and Zen koans, in that if you read it, you can just be reading and be entertained by the story. But as you get into reading it, you start seeing, oh, there's lots of wordplay here, and it starts to all have kind of a, I don't know, almost an existential poetry angle to it. And then the story is deep enough that there can be many meanings, and so you start reading it again and again. You can. And in that regard, it's the Zen koan part where you kind of live with, if you live with it for a little while, all of a sudden there's bigger, deeper meanings in there, and that's just wonderful for an artist to draw from. And so that, just the beginning was a good favorite part of mine. There was just all of us could be inspired in different ways, and we were open to any angle, and there was just lots of room. So I thought, did you want to chime in on any of that, or?
Well, I was going to ask Linda if she had a little something, then I'd like to chime in, but go ahead, Linda. If you...
Well,
Thank
I
you,
agree. There was so much in the wordplay that was fun, and so many of the things that happened to CC, I felt like, oh my gosh, I've had that experience, or I can relate to that, and I can picture so many of those things happening. It was fun to think about, was fun to play with, and then it was easy for me to picture imagery that I could capture when I was drawing or sketching, and that was a good exercise for me, just to keep things going, moving.
Thank you, Linda. And meanwhile, I was painting white walls white. We were getting ready to sell our house, and everything was messed up. So I literally was, that's exactly what was going on, is I was whitewashing the walls and trying to get rid of, sell the house, but I had to get rid of the marks on the walls. And so a lot of the story is my personal experience at the time. So when I hear chapter 1, that's kind of where it takes me back to, is the days of painting white on white. So, but anyway, it was fun to have a fantasy to go to while I was pretty highly stressed during that time. You know, Linda, what was it? Why did you create art based on the story? What was it that got you motivated on that?
Well, one of the things I was experiencing when I retired is I had been stockpiling art supplies for a very long time. I had a fine arts degree, and I worked in communications and graphic design. So I just always assumed that as soon as I retired, I would start painting and drawing. And then when I was faced with all these art supplies, I'd put them up on an easel and just find that I didn't know, I couldn't make a mark on the paper. I would decide to instead, think maybe I should clean the bathroom, or maybe I should do dishes or straighten out a closet or something. I'd think, okay, then I'll come back and I'll be all ready. But then I would have another excuse, like, oh, maybe I'll get paint on the floor here. What should I do about that? It'll be too messy. I don't think I have enough light, maybe more lamps, or whatever excuse I could come up with. And so it was just hard to get started. So when I started reading that book, it reminded me of other books. Over the years I read a lot, so I've read a million books like, 100 Years of Solitude or something, where I could pick up imagery. And so this was very exciting. It was helpful for me to keep moving and get going on my art again.
Wonderful. That's great. What about you, Laurice? Anything about how you were inspired art out of the story?
Well, I think I was open to the moments, and in the story, and picking out moments and just letting go and allowing bizarre things to happen, and it was worth taking risks. We had started to work and meet together, and we got comfortable, and it was very wonderful to go ahead and just try whatever. And I think, I can remember using really awful cheap paper to start with and rough charcoals, and it just, along the way, the progressions were amazing to feel and watch. Things develop. So yeah, the story was just such a good jumping off point. and the collaboration was
a lot of
very supportive, yeah.
I just, thank you, Laurice. I just saw some people had raised their hand. Paul, can you find out what the question might be on that, or there was a comment?
Yeah, I'm not sure what the questions are, but I'll suggest if you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat box. And I see one of the hand raisers did type a question in the chat box. So hopefully,
good.
as you can, take a look at those questions and
Yeah.
them.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I just got one from Julie about our creative process. We're going to be getting into that, and if we fought, we have any cat fights? I don't know. That was an imitation of a cat. But we'll get into that drama maybe later, Julie. But we will talk about that. So yeah, thank you, ladies. We're going to move on to what was the biggest challenge about all of this, going from 2D to virtual? I'll see if I can find the question on chat while you talk. But anything you want to share with us, Laurice? How it was maybe difficult to?
Well, we all have to pick our mediums and our expertises that we try to gain in life to learn and to go forward. And the technical world is so broad right now. As we're all about retirement age, so we come from back when computers were just starting off, and so I'm so happy to work just on a piece of paper and art mediums, but to go to totally different technical mediums, as Rita mentioned, I've gotten into being able to use computer files and make them nice for sharing work and so forth, computer programs. But to go to a virtual videos or anything like that, it's a huge learning curve and a huge change in experience.
Yeah, we were challenged quite a bit. What about you, Linda, for the going to the virtual?
Well, I agree with everything Laurice said. I would love to know how to do video editing, and I probably was exposed to a small amount of that through my job at the state of Minnesota, but I didn't have, I was like, I'd get overwhelmed. I'd Google things like, how do you edit film, or what do you do, or what are the steps, or what software do you need? And there's just so much out there. So that I was so relieved when Paul was like, oh, no, I'll do this if you guys just need to provide the files and the direction and give me some ideas. And then I still found myself like going to MoMA, or, I don't know, to the Broad, or to, the Louvre, and saying, oh, look what they're doing with online videos and exhibits. And then I'd feel like, oh, I think my expectations, I may need to rein some of this in a little bit. So still was very pleased with the work you did, Paul, and really gratified when I saw it. And that, with just your drafts, then we were able to give some feedback, and then just really things came together, and that really was a very interesting experience.
For sure. And I think to add to all of this is we were really grateful that Paul could be our producer. We needed the producer. And wow. So we're really grateful to him. And he was able to teach me Google Docs or no Google Drive, just different things like that. And then having this as an app for video recording, I didn't really understand how to work it. So as soon as I made a major mistake, down, no, that isn't, stop. And then I couldn't retrieve it and I didn't know how to put it together. And then it looked like you could do some editing. I thought, no, I just have to try to get it as right as I could at the time. And I was literally kneeling on my bed while I'm actually, not the bed, but kneeling down because I had to be in a quiet space. I had to focus on what I was saying and go slow. And I had to learn how to say out loud, and I don't know if I can say it, is Hermes Trismegistus. I mean, I practiced that. You have no idea. I mean, I was saying Hermes just missed us. Nope, that's not it. Hermes Trismus. No. I mean, I had some trouble there. So I went on Google, how do you say Hermes Trismegistus? And I finally learned it by saying it a million times. But, and then the other problem that I ran into was a lot of my puns were only really, you could appreciate it if you were reading the book to yourself. And I was quite worried about going audio with this. I thought, how am I gonna portray some of these puns?
Yes.
So it just kind of came to me when I was recording, I could spell some of them. And even when I talked about fakers, it was Fakirs. And I didn't spell that one, I don't think, but there were other ones that came up where I spelling them out. I was hoping the audience would see the pun that I was intending. And it was a lot of play on words. But I tried to hold on to that as best I can with this transition from you reading it to me reading it to trying to also portray the puns. So that was a little bit of a push.
Yeah.
But
I thought it was fun to hear spelling.
Yeah, we did it. We did that. So another question, Laurice, how long did the project take? What would you like to say about the time we spent?
Well, we talked about how open it was, and so that we were wandering around a lot. I think the title was very apropos. We didn't really have deadlines. We let it go as it just move along as its own pace, which was a beautiful thing for discovery. And the group had plenty of support points for each other through time, because we were all, still blending in things with our family and work and how we were doing our art when we were finding to do art. So I don't know, Cece kind of taught us how to steal time and make our art anyway, and how not to be distracted with fame and fortune. That was a fun part of the story that really hit home, that Cece talks about those ambitions, and in the present art world, that's always around you. How much are you going to be distracted by that? And then just if one of us would reach despair or negative spaces, how to deal with that. The challenge of just creation is, whether it's music or dance or any other fine art, it's a challenge to do it by yourself. So I'd suggest to anybody that if you get a chance in your life to open things up to some other people and try to join one or two or more people and try something else. So it's just a nice deviation.
Very much so. What about you, Linda? What did you think about our time?
I thought it was good for me and seemed to work for everyone, not to have a real hard deadline in mind. I think we were just trying to explore our own art and decide if we were were able to call ourselves artists, or we were just dabblers or hobbyists or crafties. So, there was kind of like a breakthrough where it was sort of like, I think this is kind of serious. I think we're actually making some good pieces here. Feels good. And as we continue to work together, that felt good, but there didn't seem to be pressure. Like, we have to go submit this somewhere. We have to go find out if somebody's going to exhibit this somewhere. And then when I think, well, you can talk about that too, but when you approached us with the idea of talking to the library, wow, it seemed like the right time, where we all felt comfortable with the art we had done and worked on, and it was at a good place for us.
For sure, Linda. I couldn't agree more. Once we really had our art together, we really weren't sure what the next step was. So we started hanging out at coffee shops. We started I Spy in coffee shops, and no one was looking at the art on the wall. And they were spilling on magazines, so if I were to have the story out there, it would be lost. And so it just didn't seem right. And then it looked like we tried to maybe buy gallery space, and that wasn't going to work because who would want to go there? And so we were just in kind of a dilemma, where to go next, maybe nowhere, but I happened to mention to my artist daughter, Laura, our dilemma. We've got art, we've got a story, where do we go? What's the venue here? And she said, have you tried the library? What? And that clicked for all of us. So I went over to White Bear Library because it was close at the time, and I talked to a gal named Therese over there, the librarian. I explained to her what we want to do. We just want some space to show our art in the book. And she said, this is an immersion of art and story. And that's where we got that byline. That gave us that. And what a gift. She said, go to the Shoreview Library. And she said they've got a great gallery there and lots of space. And Laurice said Carol Jackson was in charge over there, and she's setting up all kinds of things new for the library. And I called Carol, and she said, Rita, why don't you submit a proposal? So I did. And Paul was ready to catch us. The timing was amazing. Yeah, so that was some woo-woos from Janie there when that happened. She really woo-wooed when she heard that story.
Yeah. That was funny.
That's
Well, the other thing I wanted to mention, sorry, go ahead.
I'll let you finish for sure, Laurice, but I did want to mention we're about 15 minutes to the top of the hour, so we can think about maybe looking at some of the artwork as well.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Laurice, did you want to say one short thing before we look at more art and just share it with our viewers?
I think that was Linda.
Oh,
Yeah,
was it Linda?
it's me. That's fine. Our voices might sound alike now from working together so much. The only one other thing I wanted to say was just about from the virtual exhibit was, the idea of creating our own YouTube channel. We had to laugh. I have an 8-year-old granddaughter who has her own YouTube channel, but I just never thought I would have a YouTube channel. So that's also a nice thing to be able to share with people who are a little younger than us who may be a little impressed by that.
Yeah, maybe so. So yes, Paul, that's a great idea. We have some pictures to show and to discuss with you, some of our artwork, and I'll just give you a little history on each one. Here's it's called the cat flip. But initially I was making cartoons out of CC when I first started getting into the book back in 2016. And this was making some puns that I initially started to play around with this art. And she is literally wearing snake boots. That's what that is. That's really, those are snakes on there. And I thought, well, it's kind of tongue-in-cheek kind of art. So I was having fun with making cartoons. And then the next piece, Paul, is, this is called a float. And many of the things that I write about in the book actually did happen to me. I just made fun of them and exaggerated them a little bit, or a lot. But this actually happened to me. I was out on the boat with my owl of a husband, and the pole line literally went up to the sky. You can see I drew that. That was my bail is open. Instead of the line going down with, you know, the fish, the line was literally going up to the sky. And I write about this in chapter 4. And behind there is supposedly Alice Almighty way up in the sky. And a little bit of blue for Dutchman's pants. But you'll hear and read about that in chapter 4. And then this other one, Paula, if you'd switch, it was a good run. I call this, it was a good run. I wanted the cat, I've never really well defined who the cat really looks like or what the cat looks like in my mind, but I want it to look kind of male, female, mixed, I don't know. But it was stamped. I tried to make it look like a stamp because it was a good run, and there was this motion or this moment where I had total gratitude that I experienced the story and wrote it. So that's what that picture was about. And then the last one is in behalf of Janie, and that's called Midnight Madness. And Janie's niece donated this for us to temporarily use at our art show, so people could appreciate what Janie had to offer. And Janie kept a part of our group as long as she could. But she told me after she read the story that I was mad. I was totally mad. And she said the story, she said,
like a mad hatter.
Like a mad hatter, part mad,
Yeah.
yes. And she said, Rita, I've been holding on to this painting. It's called Midnight Madness, and I never knew where it was going to end up. And now I know it belongs in this show. And this is my woo-woo. And so she wanted to share it with us. And her niece Jill was generous enough to loan it to us and the library so we could share what she was willing to have with us. And it was a wonderful journey with her. So I thank her, and I'll pass on to Linda if you want to say anything more about that or your work.
Oh, okay. Well, this is early on in the stories that I love the part where Cece shares her frustration about creating art that's valued or appreciated, and she kind of expresses the desire for fame and fortune, and it's something like I think we all think about from time to time, even if it's sort of a secret thought. I wanted to give an image. Whenever I thought of Cece, I thought of her as Rita sometimes, and sometimes as Cece the cat. So sometimes I would do a cat-like looking woman that I thought of as Rita, and sometimes and in this image I've got both people. They're both sleeping, so it's kind of a dream world, but they're in a busy gallery with all of Cece's art on the wall, and she's got a big crowd of people, including some owls and some cats in the crowd watching. No, we can, yeah. This was one of the abstract pieces. Again, I think we've all expressed that we love the way that Rita's expressions, there's just so many beautiful expressions, and I love this one, and I titled it, and she wanted to smile more than ever in these moments of insight. And so that's an expression I can relate to. I love the idea of it. I couldn't capture it. So abstract really helped me to kind of say what I was thinking when I would think of that phrase. Because Cece would just get excited when she would, you know, come up with a new meaning of life or a new a new concept that struck her funny.
Yeah.
We can go to the, okay. This one is titled Submerged in a Meditative State, She Became Her Own Ceiling Fan. It's quite a bit later in the story, maybe chapter 9. I could just relate to those moments where you just wish you could just somehow disappear. Most of my moments are like embarrassing moments or humiliating moments, but I loved Cece so much. By the time I finished the story, I wanted Cece to be able to escape, but do it with some kind of class and some kind of calm. So as she becomes her own ceiling fan and disappears up into the ceiling, she's very calmly posing in tree pose from yoga.
Very nice. Okay. So Laurice?
Okay, I believe my first one is I'm Not All There Myself.
Yes.
And
Yes.
this one is a textural landscape that I thought about the spaces and dimensions that Cece can kind of, it seems like see through. I don't know if you've had cats where you watch them and they're staring off into space and you ask yourself, well, what are they doing? What do they see that I can't see?
Yes.
And cats that it seems like they can walk through different planes of existence. And it just gives me the feeling that the world that they see is not the one I see. So, just to give myself some space, I created this landscape, and then I get a hint in there that you might see a cat, and it's also a play on, of course, Alice in Wonderland and the Cheshire Cat a little bit. But I really liked also the idea that in the story, Cece questions she talks about her past history and Schrodinger's cat, the two cats, the one that exists or not exists, kind of protons or whatever they are in space, and cats in space, one's dead and one's not, but in fact they can both exist. They're just in different locations in the universe. So that's what that piece is about. And kind of different levels.
Yeah.
The second one is inspiration, and one of the phrases in the story is the ever-evolving universe is expanding with, around, and in us. And I really liked that in us part. That it's kind of a mysterious add there, like you're inside the core of your existence. And in fact, Cece contemplates her own vibration, which I think is what I tried to capture.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what that one is about.
Nice.
Mm-hmm. Very nice.
And the third one, Crescendo, is also kind of thinking about the ladder in this, I think, 6th chapter. She has one phrase, ROYGB violet. And to me, it really related to the cycle of an energy flow, that whole series there of the ladder, where something's bursting and kind of a waveform up, and then descending or spreading out and dissipating and slowing down, and then becoming very calm and floating and drifting. And then something kind of throws some energy in there, and it starts speeding up and coalescing and starting to peak up and reaching up and bursting out again. And so it was taking Rita's story and trying to express something that I've always contemplated for many years, so it all clicked together, so that was fun.
That was great, Laurice. Thank you. Right. Well, I know we had a few, we really didn't discuss any cat fights. We didn't get there, but we obviously worked them out if there were any. And there was a YouTube question I know Paul's going to be addressing pretty soon, but I don't know. I think we should just quickly share what we hope our audience gets from our virtual audio visual that will be on YouTube. What do we hope that they gain or get from it? Linda?
I'm just hoping people will give find an opportunity to find people that I know are kind of like-minded or do some of the things that you do and you're interested in, because giving that a chance, well, we kind of, throughout this process, we would kind of quote Neil Johnston, who would say, when artists come together and have sort of inspiration and are working together, there's just sort of a magic that happens. And that did happen for us. I hope other people will be able to experience something like that.
Mm-hmm. Laurice?
Well, I think it seemed like a unique piece that we did where we took a story and then we didn't, I mean, we just did artwork, not necessarily illustrating everything precisely to the story, just like a cartoon or a graphic novel. We let it be far more open than that. So I'm hoping that others can if they want to try, just try, pick a story or a poem, and if it inspires you, try to do some art from it, or put them or layer them together. For those people that aren't artists, I'm hoping that it's a clue as to a path how to enjoy fine art. A story can help clarify artwork, and artwork can help clarify story. And I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with, musicians using art as a base, or, the opera, where there's several layers of fine artists that come together to do that. And so I know a lot of people from my construction background that don't go to art museums or any museums, and they don't know how to approach things. And I think that it's just a good path to figuring it out and go and enjoy just by being open to the different layering of different art forms together.
Oh, very good.
Mhm.
I guess I'd just like to say it's the process of it that I really enjoyed. The process, the outcome was a bonus, but the process was truly a gift, and it really helped me in all of the life challenges that were going on at the time. No, I didn't buy a cat as a result of this. I'm allergic, which you'll find out when you
Later in
listen
the
to the book
story.
later in the story. But I think that's pretty much what we would like our audiences to get. And Paul, I didn't know if you want to bring us home on how they'll be seeing this in the future.
I can do that. Thank you so much. This has been a wonderful evening. I've really greatly enjoyed hearing from all three of you about this whole project. I actually learned quite a bit despite having talked to you all over the last half year about this project. So it's been wonderful. Thank you to everyone who came, and I hope you also enjoyed hearing from the artists today. I'm going to put in the chat box that link to the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund survey. If you could take a minute to fill that out before you close your computer this evening, that would be greatly appreciated. The YouTube channel that we've mentioned, I will send an email out with that link probably tomorrow and at the latest next week. That link will be to the videos. There are 3 videos that comprise the story itself, so chapters 1 through 9. And then there'll be a 4th video that has that kind of gallery wall view that you had a chance to see in this particular presentation. Eventually, I think we will also post the recording of this evening's presentation on that YouTube channel so that you'll have a chance to share it with others who couldn't make it tonight. Thank you all again for coming. I'm going to go ahead and end the recording now, but I will also then say if anyone has lingering questions or comments for the artists, please do add them to the chat box now.